Hi, I'm Jonathan Ward.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Lane.
I'm Sonia. Together, we're unlocking leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenge from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understand challenges and opportunities. Let's get to it. Our question today is from Portia in Valencia. What are the top four things you believe won't change over the next 10 years? Kimberly, what are your top four?
I love this question because so often as human beings, we're always looking what's wrong or what's going to change. So to kind of actually take a conscious moment to say what's not going to change, what can I keep on doing, or what still is the basis of my business or my leadership skills. So my top four are, I believe connection will always be the hub of successful business. And it's really emotional connection that is the hub of business, meaning people connect through emotion. We do need connection to survive. We're human beings. It's a way to drive sales. It's a way to build better relationship with your clients, to promote your business, your suppliers, community members, et cetera, and we all know that employees will leave when they don't feel there's an essence of connection or belonging in the workplace. So that's number one. My number two would be, we never have all the answers as leaders, right? So we have to learn to surround ourselves with good resources and get comfortable moving forward with some ambiguity. So we'll never have all the answers. Number three, I believe the customer focus and market demand will be always our keys to driving success for a business. Meaning, if we're always staying focused on what the customer needs are, having great customer service and what the demands of the marketplace, and we build our products and services around that, we can't go wrong, that we will always be able to survive and be considered innovative in the marketplace. And my fourth would be, people will always be at the root of every success and every failure. Even as we get into automation, at the end of the day, it's still people creating that automation or regulating that automation or implementing that automation. And so we live and die by the success or failure of our people and our actions. And so we really have to be cognizant about who we're hiring, who we surround ourselves with. And they're really, good people are our greatest investment and our greatest asset and our greatest competitive edge, I feel, in business. So anybody else want to jump in on their top four?
Jonathan, what are your top four?
My top four, I want to piggyback on Kimberly's connection thing. Yes, employees may or may not be in the office physically, but they still want to feel included and connected. They want to have their contributions recognized, and they want to be offered the opportunity to advance. So as a leader, we always have to be looking for ways to keep our team visible and appreciated. My second thing for me is that chaos and uncontrollable environmental changes are going to be here forever. And so I think you have to be resilient. Resiliency is the key to surviving this. You have to learn to flex and roll with the punches. And so you've got to learn to, again, with connection, connect with colleagues who are empathetic and positive, people with the attitude that will get through this together, and not people who want to drag you down into the mud and have you complain all the time with them. And for me, also, a big thing is that work still needs to get done one conversation at a time. We have to be able to get issues out on the table and discuss them frankly and openly, and we have to learn to listen deeply to each other. And finally, there's been a huge effort recently to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion in a lot of all viewpoints in many corporations. I don't believe it's just a flavor of the month. I really believe that the underlying principles are important and vital to companies. It's important to create a vibrant workplace where everyone can feel like they're contributing to their best ability. And so as a leader, it's up to you to find ways to ensure that everyone has their voice heard. And it's not just the people who haven't been heard before, but you've got to also watch out for people who are now afraid to voice their opinion because they're afraid of saying something wrong or politically incorrect. No one should feel shut down or excluded. And so you've got to try to manage those conversations and then make sure, of course, that your actions are in alignment with your words. So if you ask for honest feedback from people, don't shoot the messenger.
I think that's a great point. I wanted to add to something that you just said about the being able to speak up no matter where you sit. There's a couple of leaders that are diverse leaders that I'm coaching that I have encouraged them to be very candid and very supportive of the other members of the team that are not diverse, particularly men, and see what happens. And what they have said is they have come and thanked him profusely, or thank her profusely, because they now realize that in that world, in their company, there's a safe place for them to really participate and engage. And so they can leave things outside that may be perceived differently because of the shrieker meter or whatever we want to call it out there. So those are great points. Well, I, like Kimberly, liked this question because I thought, yeah, I never think down this path, but this is really helpful. So I'll go through mine. The first one is the value of actionable intelligence, which requires the processing of information with context, perspective, and experience in the related area. I think that that's something that, obviously actionable intelligence comes from the CIA, but it's about being able to, because we have so much information coming at us in so many different places, but we need to have it vetted by people that have that knowledge and that context and experience in order to be able to say, well, what does that really mean? Do we do something about that right now? Or do we not do anything about it right now? The second one is the leadership skills required to build high-performing teams, not just globally, because eventually it'll be interplanetary. So very much piggybacking on what both of you guys said. And that, as I agree with Jonathan, it happens one conversation at a time, and it's about being able to, sort out and bring out the things that cause conflict or conflict resolution. The next one is the need for natural and organic products to contribute to overall wellness. I would say that the stress level that we all are under and that we're experiencing is really draining our energy very much. And so, in the past, we might have said, okay, well, I should probably not eat much junk, but you can actually feel the difference when you're eating food that has, I go to the farmer's market every Saturday. And when sometimes I'll have like a gathering or something like that, there was one person that we had a meeting for a group of coaches many years ago, and I'd been at a very interesting farmer's market and that I'd never been to before. And so when we were finished eating, everybody sat back, everybody looked so happy. And she said, Sonia, there was a lot of life in that food. And so that's the thing that I think about, is there will always be a market for that, and for us to be able to pay attention to that for ourselves. Then the last, a little bit piggybacking on what you all said, and I'm going to hold up the book from where I got the name of this. It's called Emotionomics. And it was written by Dan Hill, and he's a coach and he worked in advertising for a really long time. And it's navigating the emotional dynamics that determine a healthy and productive organization culture. I think of it as also translating into a personal culture. When I think of, every family goes through whatever they go through, and part of hopefully being in a family is healing. In my family, we always say, okay, love is the highest frequency. So can we tap into love more often? And so I guess that's what I would say is at the core, as Kimberly brought up, as human beings, we have a desire to be able to connect to another human being. And it's a lot more fun when we're doing it from a place that is elevated, because we are feeling positive about ourselves. Because I think the whole thing about love, there's many stories they want to go through and rituals and all of that. But at the end of the day, is, do you love yourself? And you have to be able to face yourself and deal with some of the issues. And I think we don't often give ourselves permission to do that. So those are my 4. Wow.
That's a lot. That's a wealth of information. Yeah. I really loved your thought on, on the wellness piece of it. I remember when I used to sell medical devices and I was calling on a hospital, I remember I had met like the COO of the hospital. And this was, I think, Henry Ford Hospital in Michigan. And they were talking about how they have changed the whole food operations within the hospital. They now have their own organic gardens, herbal gardens, everything's farm to table, natural, no preservatives, and it's made a huge impact on the well-being and health of, every patient that walks through that hospital and then gets cared for and ends up going home. But he made this comment that, in the beginning of our lifetime, or in the beginning of the evolution of human beings, food was our sustenance. Food is what we needed. And food was just such a good way to survive. Those that didn't have it didn't survive. It's almost killing us, right? Some of the food that we're ingesting. So this whole realization of there's good food and there's bad food, and that is really a strong component to your well-being and to your wellness and your longevity. I know Sonia had shared with me this great water called Amore, and it's like it's considered living water. It has electrolytes in it and all the energy molecules that are not depleted based on the filtration and the chemical elimination. But it just is such a very you taste it and you can taste how alive it is. And very often when I'm entertaining and people will come in and take a jug out, take the jug out and fill their cup, and they're like, this water tastes so good. So I think it's something that we really need to be conscious of moving into this, to our world, to our future, to the stress of the world, to the contaminants of the world, et cetera. So
I want to add to that, because I know that Jonathan was like, "What? It's a structured water." So when you're out, like on a farm or in an area that you would have like the well, as the water flows through different parts of the ground, as it gets itself together, it becomes structured in such a way that when we consume it, it actually connects to the way our natural, because we're almost like 50-60% water. So it actually connects to that part of our water that becomes that gel that holds us together. I'm glad you remembered that.
And it's interesting about how even if you don't eat well and you've been used to eating well, you really notice the difference. I was telling Sonia, I just got back from a conference in Nashville, and there was not much to eat that was not greasy or fried or anything like that. I actually ended up losing 3 pounds during the course of the week at the conference, just because I couldn't find things that made me feel good to eat. So, taking care of yourself is a big thing, and you've got to do that, whether it's through watching your own health, watching what you eat, and taking care of yourself organically, taking care of your team as well. I think again, it really is about making that human connection, realizing we are people fundamentally that are getting the work done here, and that we've got to find a way to work together. So, Portia, you've asked a great question here. There's so much for us to be thinking about, and I think we really do see that that going forward, that there are so many things that are similar about how we get things done as leaders, that you need to be as a leader. There are so many things that working with a coach can help you on, in terms of being in connection with yourself and being in connection with the people around you, and going back to Kimberly's first point, that this is about producing something that's really wonderful for our customers as well. And so seeing yourself in that part of that big connection and having that curiosity about what's going on around you is really going to help you be successful no matter what happens. Anything else?
No?
I was just going to touch on, I think, the final point that Sonia mentioned. And this is something I really promote, because there is such an absence of community these days. The things that, not to stereotype, but that, maybe 40 years ago, 50 years, where church was a big community, right? Or a lot more community action around schools or community centers, or the good old block parties, all those kind of things. And so I really feel that work has to become the new community place, kind of what you were talking about, Sonia, where people feel fed, emotionally, mentally, intellectually. They can totally grow at their own pace and be who they are and how they show up, and feel safe to do so, and encouraged to thrive. So, I think there's so much more responsibility on leaders and on organizations, and what we are trying to accomplish with the employees and the whole culture, more so than maybe even 20 to 30 to 40 years ago. So I just wanted to touch on that point.
That's it's a great question for a boss to ask in a team building session. It's like, why do you come to work? Why are you here? Let's talk about why we're here. What do we get from this? What's above and beyond what we're creating for our customers? And I think that can really help people open up with that sense of connection to each other and to the work that they're doing. And as you're saying, we spend most of our waking hours at work. Why not enjoy it? And
yeah, it's got to be better than just being miserable and showing up and punching a time card. Yeah, it does, because it trickles out. There was an interesting study that I read that say someone has a stressful leader or just a lot of anxiety at work or just overworked, burned out, it obviously we know that affects our relationship with our spouse, but it's even showing some of the ramifications for kids that kind of sometimes can be the root of being bullied or being a bully too, by the fact that the parent is not very happy at work. So it affects our whole life, permeates everything.
I wanted to bring something up that I found out. I facilitated a meeting last week, and many of the topics that come up is, so, how are you keeping your employees? What are you finding out there? And they're basically saying, in some cases, people are offering them 20% more. In some cases, they're doubling their salary. You can't compete on that kind of level when it reaches that point. But one of the leaders basically said, I'm very candid when I'm talking to a candidate, and I basically say, we survey the market that we work in, and then we add 10% to that. We also know that we have a very cohesive culture, and here are some examples of that. And if that's the kind of work environment you want to be in, we welcome you. We really want you to be here. And so you then have to weigh, like, am I just jumping to this other thing for the money? Because I don't know what else I'm also getting that's the full package. And so I think that's important. Yeah.
Well, I know that the companies that I've worked for, the ones that I'm happiest at, the pay is always way down the list. It's, am I excited about getting out of bed every morning and going to work? That was the number one thing for me. If I wasn't excited about it, I really had to start questioning why I was there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Money does not buy happiness, right? We know that. It helps,
right.
but it doesn't get you all the way up there. So
that's right. Well, obviously, you've touched on a very rich vein for conversation, Portia from Valencia. So thank you very much for your question today. And we hope that you, our viewers and listeners, have gained some new insights on what we coaches feel is not going to change in the next decade. So to our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like this episode and also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership -askthecoaches.com. We look forward to reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would you like to reach out to our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. So thanks for joining us today, and tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.